November 1918. The guns along the Western Front fell silent, but peace never reached Germany. 4 years of total war had left the empire hollow. Industry starved of coal, cities short of bread, a population exhausted and humiliated. In the final weeks, the army had disintegrated. Soldiers drifted home in silence, carrying rifles they no longer trusted and medals that meant nothing. The fatherland has collapsed. One returning infantryman wrote to his wife, "The front has come home." The Kaiser fled into Dutch exile. A republic was proclaimed in Berlin, but no one knew what that word meant. The monarchy's loyalists despised it, the working class doubted it, and between them stood a provisional government that could command little except fear. In the ports of Kiel and Wilhelmshaven, sailors mutinied. In Berlin and Munich, red flags rose above factories. Across Germany, councils of workers and soldiers declared themselves the new authority, each speaking in the name of revolution, each certain it alone represented the nation's salvation. The army's general staff, still in its uniforms of a vanished empire, looked on in disbelief. Their enemies were no longer across the trenches, but across the streets. One officer noted bitterly in his diary, "We have not lost to France or England. We have lost to our own people." The Weimar Republic was born, not in triumph, but in paralysis, a fragile state built atop the ruins of obedience. It would survive only if it could restore order. And order, in the Germany of 1919, meant the return of men who had never truly put down their arms. By the first weeks of 1919, the new republic faced collapse from within. The army had dissolved, the police were powerless, and armed factions claimed the streets. Chancellor Friedrich Ebert, once a saddle maker and social democrat, understood that the revolution could devour him as easily as it had devoured the Kaiser. To preserve the fragile state, he reached for the only force still capable of violence. On the 10th of November 1918, he struck a secret understanding with General Wilhelm Groener of the army's high command. The army would defend the new government. In return, the government would defend the army from the revolution, but the army itself was in fragments. So the task fell to the men who refused to surrender their weapons. Veterans, officers without commands, students too young to have fought, nationalists who saw defeat as a lie. They gathered in barracks and beer halls, raising new banners over old helmets. Units sprang up overnight: Epp, Lützow, Marine Brigade Ehrhardt, and dozens more. They called themselves Freikorps, Free Corps. They marched beneath skull insignia, symbols once worn by hussars, and now by exiles in their own homeland. Defence Minister Gustav Noske, the government's blunt instrument, approved their creation with chilling pragmatism. As he told the press, someone must be the bloodhound. He did not disguise what that meant. These were irregular troops, paid and armed to hunt the Republic's enemies, especially the communists who dreamed of a German Soviet. To their commanders, the Freikorps were not rebels but saviours. To the left, they were mercenaries in government pay. Yet to thousands of jobless, disillusioned men, they offered purpose, and a chance to keep fighting when everything else had been lost. In letters home, some spoke of duty, others were more honest. "We are soldiers without peace," one volunteer wrote, "and the war still needs us." In January 1919, the new republic met its first test. A general strike paralysed Berlin. Left-wing leaders Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht called for a socialist government. Crowds filled Alexanderplatz. Red banners hung from rooftops. The cabinet fled the capital and summoned Noske. His order was simple: retake the city at any cost. The Freikorps advanced into Berlin as if into enemy territory, machine guns mounted on trucks, mortars in the streets, aircraft circling above. One newspaper described the scene in language more suited to a battlefield. Shells burst against the tenements. Every window is a muzzle. The city smokes like a front line. For 5 days they fought house to house. Workers, students, and unarmed civilians fell beside armed insurgents. When the uprising collapsed, the arrests began. Luxemburg and Liebknecht were captured by members of the Guard Kavallerie Schützen Division, a Freikorps unit commanded by Waldemar Pabst. That night, both were beaten and shot, their bodies dumped into Berlin's Landwehr Canal. Pabst would later claim that Noske knew and approved. Noske, for his part, never denied it. He only said that such measures were necessary to save the state. The Republic survived, but its victory carried the taste of blood. From that moment, Germany's working class no longer trusted the government that ruled in its name, and the men of the Freikorps learned a simpler lesson. Violence worked. It brought order. It brought power. And it brought a purpose to men who could not live without war. The victory in Berlin did not bring peace. Once unleashed, the Freikorps could not be recalled. They had discovered what every government fears, that those who restore order can just as easily destroy it. Across Germany, uprisings flared, in Bremen, in the Ruhr, in Bavaria. Each time, the Republic turned again to its bloodhounds. The pattern repeated: artillery in the streets, summary executions, thousands dead. In Munich, where a short-lived Soviet republic declared itself the true Germany, Freikorps columns entered the city with rifles fixed and vengeance in their eyes. A Red Cross nurse wrote afterwards, "We found boys of 16 among the dead, shot where they stood. The soldiers said they were communists. That was reason enough." When the gunfire stopped, more than 1,000 people lay dead in the streets. To the government, the rebellion had been crushed. To the survivors, it was a massacre. Meanwhile, on Germany's eastern border, new enemies appeared. In the chaos of the Russian Revolution and the Polish uprisings, Freikorps units pushed eastward, into the Baltic, Silesia and Posen. They claimed they were defending German soil. In truth, they were waging private wars for causes no government had sanctioned. The diary of one soldier from the Eisener division recorded, "We march through villages that no longer have names. The peasants run when they see our trucks. We are fighting ghosts now." These border campaigns blurred every moral line. Prisoners were executed, villages burned, civilians shot as Bolsheviks. Yet in Berlin, Ebert and Noske praised their service and awarded medals, because in a Germany terrified of revolution, brutality looked like stability. By 1920, an estimated 250,000 men wore the Freikorps armband. They answered to no one, except their own commanders and their own myth. By the spring of 1920, Berlin's uneasy peace was little more than an illusion. The government, under pressure from the Allies and its own citizens, ordered several Freikorps units disbanded. Among them was the Marine Brigade Erhard, 2,000 men, fiercely loyal to their commander and hostile to the republic they had protected. When the order came, they refused to obey. Backed by General Walter von Lüttwitz, they turned their rifles around and began to march on Berlin. On the 13th of March 1920, they entered the capital without resistance. The army stood aside. As one officer later admitted, troops do not fire on troops. The legitimate government fled south to Dresden and then to Stuttgart. The insurgents installed a civil servant named Wolfgang Kapp as chancellor. His regime lasted 4 days. It was not the army that defeated the coup, it was the workers. From the factories and railways came a general strike that paralysed the nation. Trains halted, telegraphs fell silent, power stations shut down. Chancellor Friedrich Ebert appealed directly to the public. Every citizen who values liberty must stand against this tyranny. The strike worked. Without fuel or transport, the Freikorps could not hold Berlin. Kapp fled to Sweden. Lüttwitz resigned and vanished into the countryside. But the lesson was clear. The Republic had survived, yet only because those it feared most, the workers, had saved it. Noske was forced to resign. The Freikorps were officially dissolved. In practice, nothing ended. The men merely shed one uniform for another. Their commanders went underground, waiting for the next crisis and the next opportunity to march. Officially, the Freikorps no longer existed. In reality, they simply changed flags. Veterans' leagues, nationalist clubs, and secret paramilitaries rose across Germany. Their meetings smelled of beer, sweat, and nostalgia. Gatherings of men who had lost everything except the habit of command. General Walter von Lüttwitz, exiled and unrepentant, declared from hiding, "The struggle for Germany is not over. It has merely changed its form." In the south, in Munich, a new movement took shape among them, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Its founder, Adolf Hitler, was a veteran himself, embittered, humiliated, and fascinated by the Freikorps' mythology of strength. He borrowed their symbols, their rituals, and their enemies. The skull insignia, the torchlit marches, the belief in purification through violence. all were inherited directly from the Corps that had once crushed the communists. The Sturmabteilung, or SA, became the Freikorps, reborn in brown. Its members sang the same marching songs, carried the same iron crosses, and dreamed of revenge against a system they saw as weak. A decade earlier, these men had fought to defend the Republic. Now they were tearing it apart from within. Newspapers of the early 1930s noted the irony with unease. One editor wrote, "The ghosts of 1919 are marching again, only their uniforms have changed." By 1933, those ghosts had taken power. The veterans who had once fought for order now served a regime that worshipped destruction. When Hitler came to power, many of the old Freikorps men were already waiting in uniform. Some became SA commanders. Others joined the new army or the police. A few, like Ernst Röhm, once a Freikorps officer, now stood at the dictator's side. They had built the system they once dreamed of, an armed nation ruled by strength alone. But within a year, even they would discover the price of their creation. In 1934, during the purge known as the Night of the Long Knives, the SA was slaughtered by its own masters. Röhm was shot in his cell. Many Freikorps veterans followed. The revolution had devoured its soldiers again. From then on, the skull insignia they had once worn reappeared on the caps of another elite, the SS. Their symbols lived on, purified and weaponized until all of Europe burned beneath them. When the Third Reich finally fell in 1945, some of the surviving Freikorps men were in the ruins of Berlin. They had outlived 2 republics, 2 wars, and the idea that violence could save a nation. The historian Sebastian Haffner later wrote, "They were men of a lost generation, who sought redemption in destruction and found only repetition." The Freikorps had begun as patriots defending a broken country. They ended as architects of its second ruin, yet their shadow stretched far beyond Germany. Across Europe, movements of veterans and militias copied their uniforms and their myths, proof that chaos always finds new disciples. Today, their photographs look ancient, faces in sepia, rifles on shoulders, the blank stare of men who no longer belonged to peace. But their story is not only theirs, it is a warning that the line between saviour and destroyer is drawn in the same dust and easily erased. The Freikorps were never defeated, they were absorbed into ideology, into memory, into the modern world itself.